What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So even though the trade deadline is over 3 months away from now, there is still a lot of trade chatter that has begun based on the fact that some teams have had disastrous starts. Looking at you, Nashville Predators, Pittsburgh Penguins. So some players are looking like they might be available come trade deadline time. Before the season, I didn't think that there was going to be a lot of high quality players potentially available at the trade deadline. I'm starting to think it could be a pretty active trade deadline, even compared to last year's and years before that were absolutely wild. We look like we might have some not superstar star players, but some very good top of the lineup level guys that could potentially be available. So today I wanted to run through my way too early preliminary trade board. It's going to be my top 15. It's going to be based on how good these players are and how likely they are to get traded. Because when looking at like a Brad Marchand, I see him sprouting out on trade boards. I still think the Boston Bruins are still going to make the playoffs, still going to be in the mix. I don't think he's going to get traded. He's not on my trade board. But yeah, a player on the San Jose Sharks and Blackhawks are more likely to get traded than a guy on, just looking at it now, like my New York Islanders. Not saying I don't have a New York Islanders player on it, but that's going to be the criteria for this. How good they are, how likely it is to get traded. And without further ado, let's get into it. At number 15, I got Claude Drew. And looking at Claude Drew, he's been fantastic. He has lived up to his side of the bargain for the Ottawa Senators. Since he's got there, he put up 70-point pace. Granted, it has gone down his point per game numbers every single season, but he's been very good for the Ottawa Senators. The only problem is they are yet again not having that good of a start. They've been historically bad in November the last couple years. Yet again, they fell off after a pretty solid start. I could definitely see a scenario where, although Claude Drew, yes, he is an Ottawa native, he gave his all the last 3 seasons. They didn't sniff the playoffs in either of those 3 seasons. Again, they definitely could turn it around, but I'm just saying if they continue on this pace. So if come trade deadline time, if you're Claude Giroux, do you say, I think I'm going to go elsewhere. I think I'm going to hit the open market, trade me now to a contender. Let me sign with some other team because you guys have not been able to build an actual playoff team around, not around me, but like with me there, with me only making $6.5 million and giving you 70 points. I could definitely see Claude Giroux become open to trade come trade deadline time. And if you're the Ottawa Senators, and you got to remember, they still don't have a first round pick either this year or next year with the Evgeny Dadonov violation, not giving out the trade clause. So they're going to have to forfeit a first round pick, probably going to be next year, assuming they miss the playoffs this year. So they might be more willing to trade a Claude Giroux in order to get a first round pick that they might not have in 2026. So Claude Giroux, it's definitely possible that he's on the trade market. At number 14, I got my own Brock Nelson, sticking with the theme of very good players on underwhelming Eastern Conference teams. I don't think Brock Nelson at this point, they're fielding offers on him by any stretch, but if he is available, or if the Islanders are out of playoff contention come mid-February, he's going to be a top 3 name on trade boards, considering the fact that the last 3 years, he's put up 37 goal, 33 assist, 70-point pace. He's been fantastic as a second liner with not that good of wings compared to like Bo Horvat and Barzell on that top line. So when looking at Brock Nelson, he only has 1 year left at $6 million, half retained $3 million. He'd be an amazing piece for any actual contending team. So yeah, maybe the Islanders, if Lou Lamoriello is getting squeezed out, they end up trading him at the deadline. It's possible. He's more so on this just because he's such a good player. It's definitely more so the talent than the likelihood why he's on this. Similarly to a Claude Giroux, although I think him getting traded is a little bit more reasonable. Trevor Zegras at number 13. He has 1 more year left after this at $5.75 million. So it is a little bit of a trickier situation considering he has term after this. But yeah, he seems disengaged. He's on pace for like 30 points a season, has been playing better in recent games. But yeah, I could definitely see a team potentially take a risk on a Trevor Zegras. I'm looking at like a Boston Bruins or something like that, a team that really needs a jolt. I still think Zegras, although this stock is at an all-time low, do not get me wrong. Maybe the Ducks decide to move off him. Maybe they like some of their younger forwards more, and an up-and-coming or a team that needs some kind of offensive jolt could potentially swing on a Trevor Zegras. Next up at number 12, I got Taylor Hall. He's struggling a decent amount right now. He even got healthy scratched by the Chicago Blackhawks, which makes me think that he's definitely going to be on the trade market. I still think he can offer some type of team that maybe lacks some offensive playmaking, some speed in their middle six. I think Taylor Hall could be a decent piece. He's making, I believe, $5 million, so $2.5 million retained. He'll definitely have some suitors. He's not going to go for a first round pick, but could he get you a second and a third or something like that in a package if he starts playing a little bit better? I definitely could see it. And if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, he's definitely not a long-term core piece. You should definitely take that second or third round pick. Number 11, I have David Savard. I don't think David Savard's that good of a player, if I'm to be honest, but I think there's a very high likelihood that he does get traded. He's only making $3.5 million this season, so 1.75 retained. He's old. It's not like he's a part of the long-term plans in Montreal. You look at him in 2021, he got a first-round pick. Don't think he got a first-round pick now. He's not as good of a player as he was in 2021 when he got traded to Tampa Bay Lightning. But again, he has a playoff track record, helped the Tampa Bay Lightning win their second Stanley Cup. So I think that he definitely will be coveted by teams. Teams like their physical defensive defensemen, even if they offer nothing offensively, even if they're not that good defensively. But yeah, David Savard is that ideal third pair, the guy that you add to your third pair if you're a contender and you're looking for a veteran defensive defenseman. And I think the Montreal Canadiens definitely should move off him with the young defenseman that they have up and coming in their system. Number 10, Arthur Kaliev. This guy has been in trade talks for a while. He's 23 years old, only making $825K. He did have 28 points in 56 games at age 21 in the 2022 season or 2023 season. So there's definitely some major potential here. I don't know if he'd get traded, if the Kings would trade him along with picks to get a better player, or if some young up and coming or rebuilding team just wants to take a chance on him. Again, only $825K. I think you could probably get him for a second round pick, maybe even a third round pick. His name is definitely going to be out there in trade talks, and rightfully so, considering the track record is not like impressive, but it's not some massive commitment. I'd definitely take a chance on him if I was a younger team. Number 9, Andrei Kuzmenko, pending unrestricted free agent. Calgary, I don't really see a need to re-sign him for like on a 4 to 5 year deal that he probably would get on the open market, considering they're trying to go young. They have a bunch of young forwards that need ice time. And when looking at him, although he's not that productive this season, only 9 points in 20 games, he had 14 goals, 11 assists for 25 points in 29 games last year with the Flames. He's definitely a very hot and cold kind of player. But if you're a playoff team and at $2.75 million, if they have retained, I think a lot of teams would be interested in a guy like Andrei Kuzmenko to add to their kind of goal scoring ability. Teams that maybe lack scoring goals, he's definitely going to get a lot of interest. Maybe not a first round pick, maybe 2 seconds, maybe a second and a third, but he's going to be one of the most coveted wingers at this year's deadline. Don't think that that's that controversial. At 8th, Yanni Gourde, great third line center option for a contender. Basically, Alex Wenberg 2.0 on the same team in Seattle. I don't really see the need for Seattle to keep this guy. He's like 30 or 31 years old at this point. They have Shane Wright that needs minutes. Berkeley Cadden is coming up soon. Edward Chalet, Jagger Furcus is going to be coming up probably midseason this year or next season for sure. So it makes no sense for them to keep him here. They're probably going to stink. They're probably not going to be fighting for a playoff spot at this point. His offensive production has gone down. He had back-to-back years of 48 points in 2022 and 2023. Last year, that went down to 33. This year, it's around that same pace. But defensively, it's all about defensive with Yanni Gourde. He is that ideal third-line center. Maybe doesn't offer you that much offense, but he's so playoff proven, at least, especially with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Talking a guy like Savard, he was a massive piece to those Tampa Bay Lightning teams that won back-to-back Stanley Cups, that a lot of teams are going to be after him. He's only $2.6 million if the Seattle Kraken decide to retain half for a 2-time Cup champ that has a metric shit ton of potential, shit ton of playoff experience, not potential. But Yanni Gourde is definitely going to be a guy that's dangled out there a lot. Number 7, Patrick Kane, showtime. I don't think I'm shocking anybody when I say that Detroit's probably not going to be in the mix for the playoffs come early March, late February at this point. So I think Patrick Kane is definitely a guy that's going to be on the market. If I were them, I would definitely move off. What is he, 36, 37 years old? He's only making $4 million this season. There is some bonus money attached to that. I'm not sure how that cap hit would play out the next season with whatever team trades for him, but you can get him for a $2 million cap hit just this season. Yes, he's maybe not producing as much offensively compared to last year, and the analytics are pretty brutal, but last year he was a very effective player, and I think trading him to an actual playoff contending level team, you can unlock that 2024 version of Kane, 2023, 2024 season. Obviously, it's still 2024, but you can get that Patrick Kane back. And similar to Yanni Gourde, the guy seems to show up in the playoffs, is extremely clutch and playoff proven. I could see Patrick Kane getting sniffing maybe a first round pick. Yes, he only got a second round pick back in the 2023 season, but part of that was because he was making $10 million. You had to do so much retention, but you could get a second round pick, 2 seconds for Patrick Kane if he heats up a decent amount, if he's only going at like half a point per game right now. But yeah, Detroit would definitely be wise to move off Patrick Kane. It's not like he's a part of their long-term plans. I'm not sure if he has a no movement clause, but I'm sure he would definitely waive that if they're not in playoff contention. Number 6, Gustav Nyquist. Now, if Nashville is out of it, he's going to be top 3, probably top 4 in this, but I still think Nashville has potential to at least claw back to be in the mix come trade deadline time. All of their underlying numbers, and I think Saros has been playing so good that they're going to bounce back. But if they don't, Gustav Nyquist is definitely the guy that's going to get traded. When looking at him, 75 points last year. Yes, he was probably the third worst guy in that line, but he was playing with Ryan O'Reilly and Phil Forsberg. It's not like he was getting carried by McDavid and Draisaitl, and he was on that line. So in looking at Gustav Nyquist, great last year, only 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points in 20 games this year. But still, you look at the cap hit at half retained, he'd be around $1.6 million for a guy that had 75 points last year. So he could walk into most contenders' second line and play a pretty sizable role at that cap hit. That would be fantastic. They would definitely get a first-round pick. They already have 3 first-round picks at this year's draft. Nashville, if they decided to sell, Gustav Nyquist is the one guy that you can immediately sell and get a pretty solid return on. At number 5, this might be a little controversial, but I have McKenzie Blackwood. When looking at him, he's been very good the last 2 seasons on shit San Jose Sharks teams. Last year, I had an .899 save percentage. Doesn't seem that impressive, but again, it's San Jose. He had 2.4 goals saved above expected. This year, even better, a respectable .907. Again, on the Sharks, that's fantastic. He has 3.8 goals saved above expected. It's an interesting situation because San Jose doesn't have any retention slots. He is only making $2.35 million, so I think a team can kind of fit that under. But yeah, again, the retention spots maybe make this a little bit difficult. When looking at it long term, he's only 27 years old, but San Jose does have Askarov. That's where I'm kind of concerned. I think that they would maybe be wise to trade him, considering the fact that at this point he could probably demand like a Joey Decord 5x5 or even at least like a 4x4 and actually get some term. But Askarov is going to be your guy relatively soon. You already called him up. Pretty funny first goal that he allowed. But when looking at it, maybe you move off him and just roll with Askarov and more of a veteran next season. And I think you could get a first-round pick potentially from Blackwood. When you look at the teams that need goaltending, would Colorado, would Edmonton take a shot on McKenzie Blackwood that I think we can agree right now would be upgrades over the guys that they currently have? I think San Jose, if they didn't have Askarov in the system, I agree. You roll with Blackwood, but now that they have arguably the best goalie prospect in the entire NHL, who should be NHL ready next season, arguably NHL ready this season, I think you potentially move off Blackwood and yet again get another solid pick or prospects for McKenzie Blackwood. Next up at number 4, I'm still rocking with Frank Vatrano, although the production has been not non-existent, but very underwhelming to start the season. Only 7 points in 17 games. This is a guy that had 37 goals last year, and he only shot 13%. It wasn't like he had some fluky 23% shooting percentage and he just got lucky. He actually was pretty sustainable in terms of generating his own shot. He has a very reasonable cap hit at only $3.65 million, 1.825 at half retained. And when looking at the Anaheim Ducks, although they are a 500 team right now, a lot of that has to do with Lucas Dostal. I think we can agree by deadline time, they might be hovering around 500 or just below, but they're not actually going to be a serious playoff threat in the Western Conference. I understood keeping Vatrano last season because you thought maybe you would take that massive jump the following season and you wanted him. At this point, that actual like playoff battling for a spot jump probably isn't coming. Move off Frank Vatrano, who I think had half retained, assuming he picks it up from here on out. And even based on last year's reputation, I think we'll get you a first-round pick. If you're Anaheim, he's 30 years old, 31 years old. What are you going to do? Sign him to a 5-year deal at $5.5 million? I think that's stupid. Trade him now. Get some assets. At number 3, Ivan Provorov. 1 year left at $4.7 million. He's that ideal second pair guy for a playoff team, maybe a third pair guy on an actual contender. When looking at Ivan Provorov, I've shat on him before. I think he was kind of just miscast as that number 1 in Philadelphia. Early on, he was very good and people kind of hyped him up. But then since then, he had fallen off. But in Columbus, he's been very effective the last 100-ish games in more so of a number 2, number 3 role behind a guy like Zach Werenski playing on that second pair. And obviously, whatever team he goes to at the deadline, he ain't going to be on that top pair playing 24 minutes a night. Him in a 20, 21 minute a night role could be very good for a playoff team. He obviously brings that physicality that you look for when it comes playoff time. I think he'll easily get a first-round pick at $4.7 million, assuming they retain half at only $2.35 million. He's definitely worth a first-round pick, maybe even more on top of that. He's not a Noah Hannafin level guy like last year, but he would be a very, very good at it. Number 2, I got Mikael Granlund, 9 goals, 15 assists, 24 points in 22 games this season, 60 points in 69 games. Just crazy how he went to the Pittsburgh Penguins, played horrible in 20 games, then got dumped to the San Jose Sharks, and now is yet again emerged as a legit first liner. And this season, he's a lot more aggressive in terms of his shooting. He has 68 shots on goal in 22 games. Compare that to 134 and 69 last year. So like last year, he only had, I think, 12 goals. This year, he's already at 9. And yeah, I think maybe he's not going to be on your first line on an actual contender, but him as your second line center or second line, you throw him over to the wing, would be very effective. Again, the only reason he's not number one is the money might be a little bit tough, considering the fact San Jose, again, does not have retention spots. They have them burnt on Hurdle, Burns, and Carlson. So he makes $5 million. Blackwood's only 2.35. You could get another team to retain on that. It's perfectly reasonable, but the money is a little bit tough when looking at that. And in terms of the San Jose Sharks, I think that they would be more likely to trade a Granlund than a Blackwood that's only 27 years old and you're still not 100% sure what you have in Askarov. With Granlund, he's going to be 33 when his deal next year kicks in. So are you going to sign some kind of Toffoli 4-year, $6.5 million deal? That's what he would get on the open market for sure. I think you probably just move on and you have young guys like Celebrini, Smith, Eklund, Quinn Musty will be ready in a bit. Zetterland, Igor Chernyshov. You have a bunch of young forwards that are going to need more ice time. You say, Granlund, you were great for their development, but we're going to go get a first-round pick plus for you. Thank you for your service. I greatly appreciate it. And then at number 1, I got Marcus Pettersson, man. 1 year at $4 million. So you can get a guy that has basically been a legit top pairing defenseman for only $2 million at the deadline. Last year, 32 even strength points that placed him 32nd in the entire NHL. This year, yet again, solid offensively, considering he gets no power play time. 9 points in 21 games. Very good defensively. I said it before. I think he's like 85 to 90% of what Matthias Ekholm, more so 85 probably, but of what Matthias Ekholm was in 2023 when he got traded. Just a very reliable two-way guy. He's like 6'3", 6'4", not the heaviest guy, but he can play pretty physical, throws a decent amount of hits and block shots out there. He's a great ad. Every single team should be salivating at the mouth, and he's only 28 years old, so you can sign him if you're an actual contender and he fits your core. If most of your core is 25 to 32, lock him up on a 6-year deal at $6 million, and he is immediately a core piece. It's not like a Granlund that maybe is just a rental. Marcus Pettersson, if you're signing him, you're probably keeping him long-term because he does fit in within your core, and as a result, he's my number 1 trade board guy right now. And honestly, I don't think it's that close. If the San Jose Sharks had a retention spot, maybe I'd put Granlund because I think he's a better player right now. But Pettersson checks in at number 1. So let's roll through that again. Giroux, Nelson, Zegras, Hall, Savard, Kaliev, Kuzmenko, Gourde, Kane, Nyquist, Blackwood, Vatrano, Provorov, Granlund, and then Marcus Pettersson. Let me know in the comments what do you think. What other players could potentially be available at this year's deadline? That'd be a pretty solid crop. Again, not all 15 of those are going to get traded, but if that was the 15 that are kind of on the market come late February, that's going to be pretty interesting. That's going to be a pretty fun deadline. But let me know in the comments what do you think. I'll be seeing the next one.